Today is March 29th, 2018. I'm Jake Morphonios with Blackstone Intelligence. A couple of days back, I had posted some stuff in a video about the Second Amendment, and I had mentioned in there that we have the God-given right to own weapons. And a viewer, Hans Christian Krogh, thought that was quite funny that I would say that God has given us these rights. And he kind of made fun of it. He said, God-given rights to own weapons, he. What God gave us that right? What God came up with that law when the Constitution was made? Allah, Buddha, Yeshua, Yahweh. So let me address this. First of all, in a broad sense, and folks, you really need to understand this. Maybe go back and watch this video a few times until you learn the principles that I'm getting ready to teach you, because this is so important in the debate that we have about the proper role of government when it comes to our rights. Our rights come from only one of two sources. Either our rights come from God or our rights come from man. If humankind, if man gives us our rights, if man is the source of what constitutes a right, then logically, a man or men can take away rights from us. They can do it in a democracy with a simple majority vote. Or in a non-democracy, they can do it by the strength of force, such as in a communist country. Okay, man that gives rights can take rights away. Here's where we are different. This is why our constitutional republic was different from a typical democracy. We don't believe that our rights come from man. Our founding fathers studied the works of people like Sir William Blackstone, who my company is named after. They studied the works of John Locke and a lot of other men who were scholars. And they knew that all people are endowed at birth with certain rights which are inalienable, meaning you cannot alienate the man from the rights. You cannot take them away. We are born with certain innate rights. And among those rights, we have the right to enjoy life. We have the right to pursue our own paths of happiness, so long as we're not infringing on someone else's rights. We have the right to own property. So these are three of the big ones: the right to enjoy life, the right to make our own choices, and the right to own property. But because evil people, it is the nature of man to seek to deprive people of their rights, to seek to stop people from pursuing the paths of happiness they want for themselves, to take away people's life, or to take property, whether it's your own personal property like your home, or your money, which is your property, your natural resources. Because people try to take it away, it's considered an innate natural right for us to own the means with which to defend our rights. If we have rights that are not supposed to be taken away, we have the right to defend our lives and our property. At the time of the Founding Fathers, the primary tool that people used to defend their lives and their property was the gun. And to this day, firearms continue to be the best way to defend ourselves. We are born with these rights because they are given to us by God. If God gives us our rights, then man cannot take away our rights even through a majority vote. If God gives the rights, only God can take those rights away. Man cannot come along and say, we voted and we can take away your life from you. We voted, we can take away your property from you because majority rules. Not so. Our rights come from our Creator, and that was acknowledged by our founding generation. And that's been the acknowledgement of the U.S. government and the people for the last 200 years. So our recognition that our rights come from God and not from man, that is what makes our system different from the political systems of other countries, where liberties are stripped away because their attitude is, you only have rights because we, through government, gave you rights to begin with. And since we gave them to you, we can take them back. And that is why it is a major plank of the communist platform to destroy belief in God. Karl Marx was a Satanist. He wasn't just atheist. You read his writings, the man was a Satanist. It was the position of Karl Marx. It is the position of the learned elders of Zion to destroy religious liberty and to annihilate belief in God. And we see this all throughout communist countries. They go and they squash any belief in God out. They will kill you if you express belief in God. That way, people can be indoctrinated in this false belief that God doesn't exist. And if God doesn't exist, who gives you your rights? Not God, because he's not real. That means the state gives you your rights. And if the state gives you your rights, the state can take them away. What the state gives, it can take away. Now, understanding this, that our rights come from God or our rights come from men, do you see the fallacy of the argument that people make when they say, I'm libertarian, I don't believe in God? A lot of libertarians are atheists. They want to have it where we have certain rights that can't be taken away, but I don't believe in God. Well, if man gives you your rights, then man can take them away. Doesn't matter what you say. That's just the practical reality of it. So whether you, and I'm not suggesting that you need to be a churchy kind of person. I'm not saying you need to go to church. You just need to acknowledge the truth that man is born with rights that other men cannot take away. And those rights come from God, regardless of what name you want to label him. If you want to call him Buddha or Allah or Jesus or whatever you want to call God, the Great Spirit, however you want to interpret God, that's up to you. But the belief that there is a creator, there is a power greater than man that gives rights, that is something that everybody should believe in. Because if we don't believe that and we set up a system of government that is not based on that basic premise, then we will surely have tyranny, because the state is going to take away your rights. One of those rights is the Second Amendment. Let's talk about that for a second. The actual way that the Second Amendment was written comes across as very archaic to us in this day. Here's how it was written. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. All right. People are we're seeing these marches. We're seeing the liberals out there at these marches talking about how, the Second Amendment, you don't have to believe it. We've got retired Supreme Court justice saying, we should repeal it. You've got Larry King, the guy the CNN host, retired CNN host, who's out there talking about repealing the Second Amendment. Let me explain what this means. As a historian, we need to go back and look at what these terms meant at the time that they were used. Because as you know, a couple hundred years passes, the way that we use certain words changes. Language is kind of fluid. So you cannot judge today what is meant by the Second Amendment by today's vernacular. Let's go back and look at what they meant, and then plug in what those words or terms mean in today's language, so we can understand something that was done in the 1780s based on how we speak in 2018. Here in North Carolina, where I live, we've got a school called the University of North Carolina. And in the original school charter, back in 1789, okay, this is at the time of the U.S. Constitution being written. Here is what the University of North Carolina charter says, quote, Whereas in all well-regulated governments, it is the indispensable duty of every legislature to consult the happiness of a rising generation, and then blah, 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 blah. In all well-regulated governments, that's what it says, well-regulated. Second Amendment says a well-regulated militia. So what does well-regulated mean? I majored in history in college. My concentration was in the Revolutionary War period. At that time, colonial America, the phrase well-regulated meant well-functioning. And that is evidenced by what we just read in the UNC Charter of 1789. Well-regulated meant well-functioning. Okay, so a well-regulated school does not mean well-regimented with military or whatever. Well-regulated militia is a militia that functions effectively. Okay, well-regulated functions effectively. Let's set that aside a second. The founders knew that for a body of people to remain free, they needed to have an armed militia. So this is the next point from the phrasing of the Second Amendment. The founders knew, and this is replete in their writings, the people need a militia. The question then is, what is meant by the word militia? Because today people say, oh, a militia was a great big army, or it was this, or it was that. I think Larry King is the one who was saying that, oh, no, it was just about keeping slaves down. No, 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 no. The founders were very clear about what a militia was. They feared keeping a standing army on the soil of the homeland because a standing army could easily be turned against the people. Okay, it is against the law. It's the U.S. military is not used against the American people. They did not want a standing army to be used against the people. Instead, to provide for defense inside the country, the founders wanted to have an effective, well-armed militia. Here's what a militia is. Founding father Richard Henry Lee, very, very well-known founding father, he defined what is meant by the word militia. Quote, "A militia, when properly formed, are in fact the people themselves, and render regular troops in great measure unnecessary. To preserve liberty, it is essential that the whole body of the people always possess arms and be taught alike, especially when young, how to use them." There it is. That's pretty straightforward, isn't it? A militia is the body of the people themselves, and that they are to possess arms and be taught how to use them. It's pretty straightforward. Yet modern liberals would have us ignore the explanations that are given by our founding fathers. They want us to ignore the intent of the very men who fought to free us from the British who wrote our Constitution. And speaking of the Constitution itself, the principal author of the Constitution was James Madison, he became one of our early U.S. presidents. James Madison, the chief architect of the Constitution, here is what he said about militias. Quote, "The Constitution preserves the advantage of being armed, which Americans possess over the people of almost every other nation where the governments are afraid to trust the people with arms. A well-regulated militia composed of the body of the people, trained to arms, is the best and most natural defense of a free country." And guys, this definition of what a militia is everywhere in the writings of our founding fathers. So if we go back and take the meanings as understood by the founding generation, if we take what they said, the meaning of a militia is the body of the people, the general population of the country. So if we take all of this and put it back together, Let's read again what the Constitution, how the Second Amendment is written. It is written, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. So using modern vernacular, what that means is this. The government may not limit the right of the people to own and use guns, in order that the people may protect themselves and their nation from their enemies. That is what the Constitution says. And all the liberal pontification, all of their sophistry will not change that. And so if you are going to engage others in this conversation of whether or not we should have the Second Amendment, you need to understand these basic principles. You need to understand, what does the Constitution say, and what do the words mean that are used? We need to be educated in our fight against tyranny. The fact is, our founding fathers, they were not worried that we were going to lose the right to bear arms, which was going to impact the duck hunting segment of the population. They were not concerned about protecting guns for the purpose of sporting events or going out shooting turkeys for Thanksgiving dinner. They were worried that if we lost the right to bear arms, we could not protect ourselves from tyrants. And having seen their own government turn against them, these people were loyal British subjects. Washington and the others were loyal British citizens until their government turned against them and started killing them, taking their rights away. Then they rebelled. And they knew that it is the nature of men to seek power, and if a government grows to the point that it is so strong that it can assault its own people and subjugate them to slavery, the people have to have the means by which to defend themselves. And that is why the founders said the entire body of the people should be well armed, and there is no justification of the federal government to infringe in any way on the people's right to bear arms. Ban bump stocks my butt. It is not the place of the federal government. If individual states want to debate that, that's a state matter. But the federal government cannot ban guns. You say, well, what does a person need a high-capacity magazine for? I'll tell you what it's for. When the brown shirts come around your neighborhood, rounding you up and sticking you in train cars to send you to FEMA camps, you probably want to be able to shoot more than 6 shots at a time. Anything that the government has to use potentially against us, we have the right to have that as well. If we don't have the right, they don't have the right. Why? Because government does not have more rights than the people. We are the masters. We are the one who gives, we cede power over to our representatives in government. But if we ourselves don't have a certain power, we cannot give that power to the government. You cannot give to the government a power that you yourself don't possess. Are you seeing where I'm coming from? This is a scary time in American history when we have people out there paid for by George Soros and other billionaires, paying large groups of people, manipulating them because they are weak-minded and ignorant of U.S. history and world history, out there marching, demanding that our God-given right to defend ourselves be stripped away. This is not an organic movement. This is not we, the people, rising up making these demands, but that's how the media is trying to make it look, to spin it, because the media is completely controlled by the Zionists who are after our guns. We have to take a stand, and the stand that has to be taken in this phase does not require us going out fighting with guns. We would get slaughtered probably at this point. But Where we do need to be well armed is well armed in a way that we can articulate our positions. We need to fight in the battle of ideas, but you can't do that if you don't understand the issues. Please, if you engage in this kind of debate in social media, if you're someone who believes in the Second Amendment and you try to debate this with people, I want you to go back and listen to this video. I want you to share this video in forums, in social media where Second Amendment discussion takes place, because these foundational principles are what we need to share and help people to understand in order to be smart in the way that we defend our belief in the Second Amendment. Because right now, the enemy is winning. Right now, people who are in the middle are coming away thinking, yeah, that's right. Why do we need to have guns? We don't need to have guns. These other countries, they don't have guns. Why do we need to have guns? They don't know that our founders specifically pointed that out, saying the reason that our people will be free while other nations have their rights taken away is because our general body will be well armed and the government will not have power over the people. And if that sounds like conspiracy theory to you, how many people did Mao Zedong kill? It was around 60 million. How many people did Stalin kill? Around 60 million. Pol Pot, from one person to the next, and most of them were atheists, by the way. They slaughter on a wide scale only because the people have first been disarmed and cannot defend themselves. That is why we have that rallying cry about prying my gun from my cold dead hands. Some things are worth standing and fighting for. If we lose the Second Amendment, we will lose the First Amendment. Guaranteed. And everything else along with it. Because we know doggone well that our government is brimming with corruption. And the only thing that keeps them in check is fear of the people. Thank you guys for watching. If you found this informative, I deeply would appreciate you taking a moment to go to PayPal or Patreon to make a donation to support my work. Go to patreon.com/endtimesnewsreport or paypal.me/endtimesnewsreport. You can also send a letter to me at Jake Morphonios, P.O. Box 1333, Kernersville, North Carolina 27285. And I do appreciate you guys watching. Please share this video. For Blackstone Intelligence, I'm Jake Morphonios.